Imagine for a moment, you're sitting in a quiet room, surrounded only by the sound of your own thoughts. Suddenly, something stirs deep within you, something you've ignored for years. A quiet whisper, a subtle ache, an unspoken question that refuses to stay silent. Carl Jung, one of the greatest thinkers of the 20th century, believed deeply in that whisper. To him, everything we do before the age of 40 is merely preparation, a search. True awakening, he claimed, doesn't begin until that phase of life is over. Are you ready to understand why? Society teaches us the opposite, doesn't it? From a young age, we're bombarded with expectations. We're raised with the belief that success has an invisible expiration date, and it always seems to be tied to youth. By 20, you should know what you want from life. By 30, you should have a solid career, a happy marriage, maybe kids on the way, and even your long-awaited home. And after that, well, they say you just keep going. But what if you follow this script perfectly and still feel lost? Jung believed that this feeling isn't just common, it's inevitable. Because everything we value in the first half of life, status, appearance, recognition, doesn't reflect who we truly are. By midlife, most of us have constructed what Jung called a persona, a mask we wear to meet the expectations of others. It's that I'm fine facade we show the world even when we're drowning inside. And right here, if this message is already resonating with something inside you, don't forget to support this journey. Subscribe to the channel and leave a comment below. Tell us, what part of your story are you starting to question? Think about how many times you smiled at a meeting, even when you disagreed with everything being said. How many decisions have you made just because someone else expected you to? Is that truly you? Or are you living out someone else's projection? That is the first fracture. We enter adulthood as a series of experiments, accepting roles we don't always choose consciously. But at some point, something begins to shift, like a small crack slowly forming in what once seemed like a solid wall. Questions start to seep through. You begin to wonder, was this really my choice? Or was it a decision made for me? Here comes the most unsettling question of all. How many of your achievements actually bring you fulfillment? If you could start over, what would you do differently? These questions don't come because you failed. On the contrary, they arise because your mind is preparing for something greater. Something Jung called individuation, the process of discovering who you truly are, beyond the mask. And here's the irony. Society teaches us to fear this moment. How many times have you heard that a midlife crisis marks the beginning of decline? That aging is the enemy? That once you hit a certain age, all that remains is regret and nostalgia? But Jung saw it completely differently. To him, this is when the real journey begins. Why should we fear the very thing that sets us free? He viewed the first 40 years as a training ground. Imagine it as one vast laboratory where you experiment with roles, ideas, and identities. But that adaptation comes at a cost. The creation of a self formed by the expectations of others. A self that may be celebrated as successful in the eyes of society, yet painfully disconnected from its core. That's why so many people, even after achieving everything they thought they wanted, still feel an unshakable emptiness. But that emptiness is not a punishment. It's an invitation. It's the first sign that something new is trying to emerge. If up until now it felt like you were just rehearsing, like an actor waiting backstage for the real performance to begin, that's because you were. You needed that early phase to understand the basics of who you are and what this world means to you. But here's the next deeply confronting question. What happens if you ignore that inner call? Many people do. When the first signs of discomfort appear, a job that no longer inspires, a relationship that feels suffocating, or a vague sense that something's missing. The most common response is to numb the feeling with more of the same. A new car, more overtime, a spontaneous vacation, or a drastic life change with no real reflection. But without confronting the truth, these are just temporary fixes. The emptiness doesn't go away. It lingers until you are willing to face it. And when you do, that's when life truly begins. Not because you quit everything, but because for the first time, you start asking the real questions. Who am I without the mask? What part of me has been waiting patiently in the dark? These questions are uncomfortable, but they're also liberating. Just imagine the shift in perspective. If until now, you've lived to meet others' expectations, what would it feel like to wake up every day knowing you're living in alignment with your own values? Jung believed this transition could be frightening because it requires us to let go of parts of ourselves we've carefully constructed. But it's a necessary shedding, like pruning a tree so that new branches can grow. It's not about destroying your past, it's about integrating everything you've learned and moving forward with honesty. Here's something fascinating. Modern neuroscience confirms what Jung intuited nearly a century ago. Around age 40, the brain begins to change. Regions responsible for deep reflection and emotional decision-making become more balanced. This allows us to view life from a broader, more meaningful perspective. In other words, biologically, we're better equipped to search for purpose and meaning. And if you're feeling this shift inside you, this quiet call for something deeper, take a moment now. Subscribe to this channel and leave a comment below. What's the question that keeps returning to your soul? Because whether you realize it or not, your brain and your soul are aligning. They're preparing you for the second half of life, one lived not for validation, but for truth. But now comes the biggest question of all. What will you do with this opportunity? If everything you've done until now was just the preparation, what's your next move? Are you ready to remove the mask and discover what lies behind it? That is the path Jung invites us to explore. And in the next steps of this journey, we'll understand how the mask was built, and more importantly, how we begin to take it off. Because it's not enough to know that life begins at 40. You must choose to live it like it truly does. Have you ever wondered how many versions of yourself you carry around each day? At work, there's the smiling, attentive, responsible you, even when all you really want is to scream. With friends, there's the relaxed, fun, always up for a chat version, even when your mind is miles away, consumed by something else. And then there's that you, the one who only shows up when no one is watching, the one who no longer needs to play a role, yet still feels painfully lost. That, Jung said, is your shadow. The rest, that's the persona, the mask we wear to navigate the world and win its approval. And if you're wondering how it got there, the answer is simple. We built it, brick by brick, layer by layer, based on what others expected of us. Jung saw the persona as a necessary tool, but also a dangerous trap. As children, we are our true selves. We cry when we're sad, yell when we're angry, laugh without restraint. There are no filters, but slowly we learn the rules. Don't cry, or they'll think you're weak. Be a good student, or your parents will be disappointed. Smile, even when you're not happy. We start to recognize which behaviors bring approval and which ones bring rejection. As social beings, we instinctively seek validation. The result? We create the mask. And this mask doesn't form overnight. It's built over years, shaped by parents, teachers, peers, bosses, and today, even by social media. Think about how many decisions you've made believing you were following your heart, but deep down, you were simply afraid of being judged. Did you choose that college because your parents expected it? Take that job despite having no passion for it because someone told you security is everything? Stay in a relationship that didn't make you happy just because it seemed like the right thing to do? That's the trap of the persona. It offers recognition, but at the cost of your authenticity. And the most dangerous part? You don't even realize it's happening. We grow so used to wearing the mask that we forget who's underneath. Jung believed this emotional void, the one so many feel around midlife, isn't caused by physical exhaustion. It's the fatigue of constantly maintaining a life that doesn't belong to you. Imagine a woman named Clara. For over 2 decades, she devoted herself to professional success. To the outside world, she was a shining example of determination. Top of her class, rapid promotions, admired by colleagues, praised by family, but alone in the quiet of her room. When the awards on the shelf couldn't silence the noise in her head, she would whisper, "Is this all there is?" For years, she wore the mask of the flawless professional. She sacrificed hobbies, travel, even love in the name of achievement. Now she doesn't even remember what makes her happy. She followed every rule, and yet it feels like she's living someone else's life. And Clara's story isn't rare. In fact, it's nearly a modern cliche. We see people reach success only to discover it brings no real fulfillment because success built on persona is hollow. It's like drinking salt water when you're thirsty. The more you consume, the thirstier you become. That's the illusion of persona. It convinces us that if we just get the job, the house, the recognition, we'll finally feel whole. But each time we reach the goal, a new emptiness appears, and that's when the inner conflict begins. Despite the discomfort, letting go of the mask is terrifying. Imagine spending years building an identity, only to admit that it doesn't represent who you truly are. Jung said this is one of the most difficult moments in life. The persona is like armor, heavy but protective. Taking it off leaves us vulnerable, and the question arises, who will I be without it? What if no one accepts the real me? That fear is what causes many to retreat, to glue the cracks in the mask instead of looking beneath it. They buy things to fill the void, change jobs, partners, cities, believing the problem lies outside. But eventually we realize the real problem is within. And if these words have stirred something in you, don't keep it inside. Subscribe to this channel and share your thoughts in the comments. What part of your persona are you ready to question? Your voice might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. Jung believed the real battle is not between you and the world, but between your persona and your true self. One shouts to maintain appearances. The other whispers, urging you to be honest, even if it means disappointing others. And that whisper, it may be soft, but it carries the weight of your soul. Many people ask, how can I start over at 40 or 50 with so many responsibilities? Jung's answer was clear. Transformation doesn't mean abandoning everything you've built. It means reimagining it. A career that once felt like a prison can become a mission. Worn-out relationships can be healed or released with compassion. And past mistakes, they weren't wasted time. They were lessons. So here's the question that could change everything. If no one were watching, what would you do with your life? This question reveals your hidden passions. For some, it's a long-buried project or childhood dream. For others, it's the yearning to simplify, to downsize, to be present with your children, to finally breathe. The shadow isn't just darkness. It holds your buried creativity, your voice, your truth. Integrating it isn't easy, but it's the only way to feel whole, because happiness isn't found in achieving more. It's found in becoming more. And perhaps Jung's most powerful teaching is this: discomfort is not the enemy. It's the compass pointing you toward growth. If you feel lost, it's not a sign that you've failed. It's a sign that you're ready, because only those who dare to lose their old selves can ever discover who they truly are. So, are you ready? Ready to meet your shadow and see what lies behind the mask? Have you ever looked into a mirror and wondered, what am I hiding, even from myself? Jung believed that within each of us is a part we rarely show the world, a part we suppress, ignore, or even fear. He called it the shadow, and until we face it, wholeness will always elude us. The shadow is not evil. It's made of everything we once rejected because we were told it wouldn't be accepted. Our anger, our fear, our desires, our sensitivity, our shame. But ignoring them doesn't make them disappear. It only makes them louder. True healing begins when we stop running, when we look into the shadow and see not a monster, but a forgotten version of ourselves, still waiting to be loved. And that's the heart of this journey. Not perfection, not constant joy, but integration, a deep inner alignment, a life lived from the inside out. So what will you do with everything you've heard? Change never happens all at once. It begins with one decision. Maybe it's a conversation you've avoided, or the courage to say enough, or yes to something new. Whatever your next step is, take it with confidence, because as Jung said, life truly begins the moment you stop running from yourself. Before you go, I invite you to take a step, share your experience, leave a comment below with a fear, a question, or a realization. You can be anonymous. Your story might inspire someone else on this very same path. And if this message moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs it. This space exists for reflection, for courage, and for connection. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your bravery. And always remember, no matter where you are, there is still time to begin again. Until the next video.